We could be all zoomed out today. I'm not sure how everybody's day is.
Perfect. Thank you. So I think our group is in the room. We might as well get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelsey Michalek. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Youth Engagement Consultant for the Saskatchewan Parks and Recreation Association. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to today's presentation, Bright Futures, Inclusion in Recreation and Parks, facilitated by Sarah Gallsworthy from Inclusion Incorporated. I think it's also relevant to recognize that today, November 20th, is also National Child Day. This session is a wonderful opportunity for us to learn and reflect on how we can create inclusive environments for all those we're working with, including those children and youth. To begin, I would like to acknowledge that SPRA's programs, services, and support reaches lands covered by Treaties 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10, which are the traditional territories of the Cree, Dakota, Dene, Lakota, Nakota, and Saulteaux peoples, and homeland of the Métis. We respect and honor the treaties and move forward with Indigenous nations in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. We are all treaty people. Saskatchewan Parks and Recreation Association envisions a province in which all people have equitable access to recreation experiences that contribute to their health and well-being, that result in connected and engaged community members, and that provide connection and attachment to the natural environment. Our mission is to provide leadership, support, and services that contribute to recreation's impact on the quality of life for people in Saskatchewan. You can learn more about us and our work by following the Saskatchewan Parks and Recreation Association, or Sask Parks and Rec, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, or visit our website at www.spra.sk.ca. I would also like to recognize our funder, Sask Lotteries. Through an agreement with the Government of Saskatchewan, proceeds from Sask Lotteries are dedicated to sport, culture, and recreation organizations throughout the province. These proceeds are placed in the Saskatchewan Lotteries Trust Fund for Sport, Culture, and Recreation, which benefits more than 12,000 sport, culture, and recreation groups and helps nearly 1,000 communities. We are the only province in the country who enjoys this level of support, and for that, we are very grateful. Now, without further ado, I am pleased to welcome our facilitator for this session, Sarah Gallsworthy. Sarah Gallsworthy is on a journey to share the power of movement, inclusion, health, and quality programming. Growing up in British Columbia, she learned early about the value of active, healthy living. As part of the LGBTQI2S+ community, Sarah also understands that barriers to programs, society, and spaces can limit potential. She is an advocate for awareness and inclusion to help others find a sense of belonging and acceptance. Sarah left the healthcare sector with a passion for teaching others. She is currently a professor in both the fitness, health promotion, and recreation programs at Seneca College in Ontario, a learning facilitator for the Coaching Association of Ontario, a physical literacy master learning facilitator with Sport for Life, and a master trainer with High Five. As a sport and recreation consultant, Sarah has been a part of many provincial, territorial, and national initiatives that support physical literacy, child development, and quality engagement. When not working, you can likely find Sarah keeping active at her local park in her most important role of mom to a young daughter while tossing a frisbee that will likely never be returned to her Great Dane, Hamilton. Welcome, Sarah. Let you take it away.
Thank you so much. Welcome everybody to our webinar today. And if I forget to say this, I'm going to do it now because I do forget to say this. Just to Carrie and Kelsey, thank you for your support and kindness in helping set this all up and making sure that we kind of hit the right thing. So I appreciate your support today so much. So thank you to the two of you. Okay, so welcome to the webinar today. I'm going to be sharing a bunch of slides. I have 1 hour to talk about something I could talk for 400 hours. I was recently in your neck of the woods not that long ago, doing some work at the, what was it, the YR, I forget your abbreviation, the youth conference something. I keynoted there. And so what was it called, Kelsey? What's the abbreviation?
In Alberta, it was the
Oh,
Youth
Alberta, yeah.
Development through Recreation Services, YDRS. Yeah.
That's it. Thank you. So I was there, not too far from where you are, and it was a great conversation. So I'm going to kind of continue a similar sort of piece here, and go from there. So there we go. You, each of you, are more than welcome to participate how you wish today. You want to just sit and listen. You'd like to ask questions. You can be disgruntled. You can be impassioned. You can be. It may hurt your heart. This conversation we're going to have is difficult. It's not easy, the work that this is doing. It's going to crack you open, and it's all the right ways. My friend recently said to me, it's the cracks that help the light come in. And sometimes we're going to recognize through this work that it starts with each of us. I'm still doing this work. It never ends. It's difficult. It's actionable. It's ongoing. And so I hope that I give some things to think about today. And again, you don't need to agree with me. You feel you can challenge me. And there's no question off the table, whether it's a personal question about myself or a question about the things I've said or the things we're going to talk about. I'm not the knower of all things, but I certainly care deeply about creating safe spaces for all people that come to recreation and sport and parks programs. This is my world. I've worked in this space almost my entire career. And I think this is really important that we dig in. So let's get going because I only have an hour, which is never enough time. And again, you're welcome however you'd like to participate today. That is for sure. I teach college students, so I'm so used to just speaking to the screen, and I don't mind at all. So before I get too far into it, I'm actually a West Coast of Canada born and raised person. I have to make sure I tell you all that. But I currently now live, work, and play and learn on the traditional territories of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe peoples. I would also like to acknowledge this is the meeting place of two treaties, the Mississauga of the Credit and those of the First Nations of the Williams Treaty. I'm an uninvited guest on these lands, and it's truly, I'm truly grateful to be here. It is a beautiful space. It is known as Markham, Ontario. So I'm one of the lowest IQ people in the world because I went from the West Coast to Canada to the East Coast. And usually people go the other way around. They go from East to West, which I highly recommend is the smarter way to do it. But here we are. Here we are. So I'd like to role model a way to introduce ourselves and how you can think about doing this. You don't have to do this my way. You do this your own way. But this is the way we do it at Inclusion Incorporated. And as I'm going to say this to you, I'm going to show you that it's easy now. You're going to be like, oh, she's easy. It's easy for her. This was very, very difficult about 5 years ago. Even the land acknowledgement was difficult 5 years ago. I can do it now. I'm comfortable to do it. I understand. Give yourself some time and space to move into this conversation and to move into how you want to start it. My name is Sarah. My pronouns are she and her. I am a cisgender female. What that means is when I was born, the doctor said, this is a girl. And technically, the doctor doesn't have the right to say that. I get to decide that. Just because I have the sex parts of a female doesn't determine my gender. But the doctor said I'm a girl. And the cisgender piece means that my sex parts, my physical parts, and my gender actually match together. And that's a privilege that I carry with me through the space. Although when I did start to get breasts through puberty and I was an athlete in British Columbia, I was like, maybe boys got it better. So I definitely had some questions, but I'm really privileged to stay in this space. And that's something I wanted to share with you. I am a member of the 2S LGBTQ community. I identify as a gay female. I came out in my 20s in university, which statistically speaking is when most young people kind of figure that stuff out, statistically speaking. I live common law with my partner, Maya, and we raise our daughter together. She was birthed by my partner. We spent over $30,000 on fertility to have her, which is why we only have one kid, because I work in sport and rec. We are not millionaires in this job. And we raise our dog, Hamilton, who's a 180-pound Great Dane, and he's amazing. And so that's a little bit about my life. I am able-bodied. I'm able to get up and walk around. I don't have any physical challenges, but I am neurodivergent. I was diagnosed with dyslexia as a child, and Kelsey and I were talking today. I was so stressed about the time of our meeting today because you're in a different time zone. I'm in a different time zone. I had a really busy day today before you, and I was just so stressed about getting the time wrong. It actually overwhelms me at times. So dyslexia can really, dates, times, numbers really are difficult for me. I grew up on the traditional territories of the Matsqui, Kwantlen, Katzie, and Semiahmoo First Nations, which is many nations from Langley, British Columbia, all the way into Whistler Mountains, all the way through Vancouver, where I got a coaching diploma. I did a lot of sports there, got mentored, just a really beautiful experience in my childhood. And then I moved to Coast Salish territory across the Coast Salish Sea, where I went to University of Victoria, and I worked for the City of Victoria as a recreation coordinator for about 15 years before I moved out here to Ontario because I met my partner, Maya. That's why I'm here. Love makes you go in the other direction, right? My parents are British. So if you know me personally, I quite swear a lot. My mom was raised in East London, and so she says bad words that are pretty normal. So swear words are just normal to me. I was raised like that. And my dad's from Sussex. He grew up in the country. I love coffee, Lego. I love Halloween. We still are taking down Halloween decorations at our house right now. And I just really like being curious about humans. So I encourage you today to be curious. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to not know. It's okay to be unsure and be kind to yourself as we're moving forward. I think Maya Angelou said it best. Do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, just do a little bit better. That's the best way we can move forward here. Be kind to yourself. I've been called out many times on things that I've said that are inappropriate towards certain communities. And I used to receive that in a defensive way. And now I receive it in an appreciative way because I don't want to continue to make those mistakes. I don't want to continue to hurt other people. I'm not in the business of doing that. So just be nice to yourself as we talk about some things that something that you may be struggling with or something that you might be still working towards or maybe not understanding. The world is ever changing. The conversation we have today is going to be different than when we have it tomorrow, and that's okay because you're going to always be learning and always be doing the work. Never stop this work. That's the best gift that you can give others is to never stop this work. Today is the National Day of Children, which is what brings me to work every single day. I technically mentor young people to inspire younger people, and that is the work we're doing. It's about celebrating active participants in our children. I took this from the Government of Canada website. It's about active citizens. How do we really create a space for kids to engage in a healthy way? Carrie and I had a really hard and interesting conversation today just before we let you all in. I was just in a webinar about LGBTQ children and youth and how the statistics are incredibly terrifying for people that identify under that umbrella. And I'm going to talk to you in a little bit more about that. This commitment to children talks about providing children's opportunities to have a voice, an authentic, honest voice, protecting children from harm. You know, at the Coaching Association of Canada, we take an oath. We take an oath, and that oath means to do no harm. And that's an important thing we need to consider. And it's not to do no harm based on what you think is right or wrong, or what's happening in the United States with the new president. It's everybody has an opportunity to thrive and succeed, especially our children. And we want to make sure that children's basic needs are met. So take a minute to really reflect on the Day of the Child and what that means for all of us in the work that we do and how we can really do a better job of including more children into this space, into our work. There's a reason why not all cultures, demographics, and identities are showing up. Today is also the Transgender Day of Remembrance, and it's something to take a moment and reflect. This is some of our most marginalized humans in Canada and the United States today. The statistics are terrifying. We should be incredibly concerned. What I was learning this morning was if a transgendered youth is being bullied, and more than 40%, it's a 40% higher rate than in non-transgendered youth. So already they're being victimized. They're at 3 times higher rates of suicidal thoughts and self-harm. It is a very dangerous experience. And when we have, and the good thing about this is our work creates safer spaces for this community, and these statistics dramatically drop when we have community, when we have affirming spaces and places and people to be around that understand what these things, that what need to be done, that language is important. And we're going to talk all about that today. So today is that National Day of Transgendered Remembrance, and it's important to take a minute to reflect and learn and to dig in just a little bit. I saw this cute little image and I wanted to share it with you. It says in the Transgender Day of Remembrance, I grabbed this, I don't have a source for it. I'll follow up with Kelsey if I do find the source. But it says 8 ways of being an ally, in particular for the trans community. Now, an ally is not a term you can give yourself. An ally is a term a community gives you. So if you are consistent and arduous and you show up consistently for the trans community, you might be referred to by the community as an ally. But here's 8 things that we can think about doing moving forward. And they're very simple things. We do not have to be experts. We do not have to know all the things to create safe spaces for others. We want to challenge discriminatory language. Some jokes and some memes are, many actually, are directed to this community. And we want to interrupt that. We don't want to allow those things. I have a rule in my family. Don't send me any jokes that are homophobic, transphobic, anti-Semitic, racist. All of the things, don't send them to me. They're not funny. They're not funny. Don't send them to me. And people might think I'm overreacting. People might think that I'm not, I could be more open, which is what many of my family members think, my older aunts and uncles in particular. Remember, my parents are from England. Keep that in mind. I interrupt. I don't want that. I don't want that. That's not funny. My friends and colleagues come from a diverse community, and I'm here for it. I'm here for stepping in and making safe spaces. So challenge discriminatory language and actions when you hear them or you see them. Don't let it go. Try to find a way to interrupt. Number 2, introduce yourself with your pronouns whenever you can. I notice some of you have your pronouns today. Do that when you're ready, though. Do it when you're ready. Pronouns are ways that we can identify ourselves. And also for me, as a cisgender person, I walk through space with privilege. It's so easy for me to say that my pronouns are she and her and open up the conversation for diverse pronouns. By me just saying my pronouns are she and her, I'm acknowledging that there are many different pronouns, and I'm not assuming a binary world where it's boys and girls, males and females. I'm understanding that there is a spectrum, and I'm here for it. I'm welcoming it in, or at least I'm trying to do the work. I'm trying to do that. Number 3, introduce pronouns in your email signatures. Display it in Zoom, display it on video calls. It matters. It really matters to this marginalized community. Never assume another person's pronouns until you know. Ask. It is really, really empowering. And just by talking about this, if you're with someone and you're not sure, this is what you say. Hey, I'm Sarah. My pronouns are she and her. What are your pronouns? And that opens up the space for that person to share with you if they feel they want to, if they feel comfortable. They might not, and that's okay too. Apologize quickly and sincerely when you make a mistake and you accidentally mispronoun someone. I do this. I do this. I mispronoun people. And this is the work I'm doing right now. And it's just to be sorry, correct it. And the best thing you can do is to make an effort to correct that behavior. Don't over apologize. Don't make it a big deal. Just, oh, I'm sorry. Refer to the right pronoun and move on. Number 6, admit when you don't know. I don't know what a pronoun is. I'm not really sure I understand what trans means. Ask those questions, dig in, learn, read. You can even read both sides of things. I mean, if you open up one thing on the internet, you're going to get all these other things that are going to get sent to you. But it is interesting to read on both sides of pieces. It's also difficult. It gives you a better understanding of where we're at. Number 7, listen to trans stories. Center trans voices. Understand that today is something that we need to reflect on. And learn more about the history of trans and gender nonconforming communities. learn about how difficult it may have been and why we are where we are here. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that in a second. But there's 8 things that we can do, and they're very, very simple things, but interrupt it and try to move forward the best way that you can. I wanted to take a second to kind of role model some of the conversations that we can have in this work. I never want to assume that people know what these acronyms mean. And so because today is Trans Day of Awareness, I thought I would just take a second to go through the LGBTQ alphabet mafia, which it's been kind of nicknamed. And by the way, this will change. This will always change. Kelsey's biography of mine, when she read it, actually, the acronym is written in the original way, and it's recently been updated to the 2S in the beginning. So this does change, and it's important that you keep up with that change and the reasons why for the change. So we now talk about it as the 2S LGBTQIA+ acronym. It encompasses a lot of people. So when you put, I got 2 right here. When you put your pride flags up, I got one right in my office. When you put your flags up, a sticker up on your laptop or your office door, you are welcoming this entire community, not just a gay person, but a diverse community group. So you got to be ready for more than just one of these letters. So 2S is now in the beginning. It is our two-spirited people. Two-spirited is a common word most recently used by our Indigenous and First People communities. And the cool and devastating thing is that in the beginning, before colonization, two-spirited people were highly respected within many, many Indigenous communities throughout Turtle Island, which is Canada and North America. They were the people to go to when these people were represented the feminine and the masculine. And when they held this, they saw this as an honor, and this person was wise, and this person was the one to go to. And then colonization occurred, and we took that away. People were taken that from this community, and then it became this binary system that we know today. So two-spirit is first, as we recognize our first peoples. Lesbian refers to women who date women typically. Now, I'm going to give you the sort of the academic definitions of these, and it's different for every person. So the best thing to do, by the way, is to say, because I use the word gay, you could say, oh, Sarah, why do you use that word and not lesbian? And I'm happy to answer that for you. So everybody's different in how they interpret these, but I'm going to give you some of the academic pieces. I am a college professor after all, but then no, I'm not, again, the knower of all pieces. Gay refers to typically men who date men. Bisexual, and the bisexual community actually receives a ton of inappropriate jokes. They're actually one of the most marginalized communities within here. Trans for sure, and then the bisexual community. Oh, you're just hogging everybody. Oh, you just can't make a decision. You just don't want to lose out. Some really silly things, you want to interrupt that. Many of my friends identify in this space. Bisexual means that you're attracted to men and women. It doesn't mean you're attracted at the same time, and it doesn't mean you're having affairs. That's not what that means. Maybe it does, but that doesn't necessarily know what that means. It means you have attraction to both genders. Transgender means that what you were born, your sex organs may be different than your identity. So you may be born with male sexual organs, but identify as a female. And that's what transgender means. This is one of our most marginalized communities in Canada today, especially Black female trans people. And also, it's no business what I have between my legs. If we were all in a room together, you don't ask me. It's none of your business. We don't ask. We don't ask cisgender people. Why are we asking transgender people? It is none of our business. Transgender people get asked very inappropriate questions on a common basis. Just because they identify as trans, it's none of our business to know what's going on in regards to where they're at. Also, it's okay to be curious, but we got to remember, think clearly and thoughtfully about the questions you're asking. Not every trans person has surgery. Not everybody wants to. We have a family friend, a distant family friend. I don't know this person, but I hear this conversation often in my family. It's a male, identified as a male, trans male, means born a female, now lives as a man, and recently had a baby. And the conversations in the house, so the conversations in my kind of house when I'm home in Vancouver is, well, that's impossible. Men can't have babies. Well, yes, they can, because this is a man that has had a child. Remember, gender and sex are very different things. So transgender, we want to dig deep onto what that understanding is and get out there, talk to people, get into the community. Queer and questioning is you're just not sure. Queer is a word that many people use to identify themselves, whether they may be gay, lesbian, they might not be sure, they might not follow into the non-binary sectors of society. It could be a political statement. Queer was seen as a very negative word back in history, and now the word's been taken back. So queer is a really good thing to ask people. What does that mean for you? Why that word? I had a friend recently use this word, and I was like, oh, what does that mean to you? Because I wasn't really sure what it meant to them. And questioning means you're not sure yet. And a lot of our young people are in that Q space, in the questioning space. I'm not sure. I don't know. I need more time. Intersect is the new, more appropriate word for what was once called hermaphrodites. This is a very small percentage of the population, very, very small percentage of the population, where the human may be born with both sex organs or a variety or combination of. And this community is a very small percentage, and the term we use is intersex. We often hear about stories in the news in regards to sport. We have some African athletes that have had some horrendous experience in this intersex space. Where do these athletes compete? And what does this look like for us? And just horrific treatment. So that's that word, intersex. Androgynous or asexual, and I've been learning about asexual a little bit more recently, where that just means androgynous means I might not identify in the male or the female. And asexual means I may not have sexual attraction for others, or it's different than other people. So I might only have it sometimes, or I might not want to be sexually intimate with someone, or I might want to do it, but not very often, or with this person I would, but this person I won't, this person I won't. There's a very, very big community within the asexual community, and they're using different words to define. So I've been listening to some podcasts recently about this community, as this is not something I understand. This is not my experience. So I'm trying to listen to stories from this community, often also a very marginalized community. And the plus is all the other stuff that we haven't figured out yet, and all the other identities of people, so that we have a space for people to come on in. Here's a safe space for you. So this is going to change. This is just the way I talk about it. The best way to figure out what they are is to dig in, reach out to community, and be curious, ask those questions. So that's a little bit about this 2S, 2S LGBTQIA plus, due to the fact that it's the Day of the Child and it's Transgender Day of Remembrance. And remember, people, kids are so much better at this than we are. There's a really cool tool out there. You may have seen it already. It's called the Gender Unicorn. There's a bunch of them. The reason why I use this one is because it can be done in French and in English for those of you who may need it. Gender is a spectrum. It's not binary. It's not so binary. Have you ever thought about your own gender expression? Have you ever even been given the opportunity to think about it? I for sure was not. Gender identity can be such a spectrum. It's a sliding scale. You're not one or the other. There's a spectrum. We sit all over the place on it. I just turned 50 years old recently, like a couple weeks ago. Pretty cool thing to turn 50, by the way. And what I find really, really interesting is I'm empowered to do a lot of things differently. I don't think you're ever going to see me ever wear a dress again. Forget it. I don't want to wear the dresses. I don't get it. That doesn't mean I'm masculine in my gender expression. For sure, I like to be dressed masculine sometimes, for sure, but I also like that feminine touch. Okay, that all has nothing to do with my sexuality. That's just my gender expression. So think about, how do you express yourself? Are you feminine expressing? Where are you on that spectrum? Sometimes in the weekends, are you dressed in a way that might be more masculine presenting? I like to buy what's considered boy jeans. I mean, I don't know why we're calling them men's jeans. They're just jeans, but I have a tendency to go on the boy side of the gap to get my pants, which means the zipper's on the other side. Who cares? Same with the button up. So maybe I'm a bit more masculine sometimes. Maybe I'm a little bit more feminine sometimes. But the cool thing is I get to decide. I have a 12-year-old. Shoes are shoes, pants are pants, shirts are shirts. Just don't be naked. Just don't be naked. That's my rule. When you go outside the house, don't be naked. What you wear, what you want to wear. And often were in clothes that would be considered on the boy side of the Gap, and that's fine, or the boy side of the Nike store, or wherever we're shopping. So what I want to say to you is this is my last piece, and we're going to get into inclusion and why you're actually here today, but I think this is important as well. This is a part of it. Gender is in your brain. You get to choose. It's for you, not society or anybody else to decide. Who you love is in your heart. Gender's in your brain. Who you love is in your heart, and your physical attraction or your physical pieces are between your legs, which is nobody's business but your own. So it is a head, heart, and physical spectrum, and we can be different every given day, and that's okay. So do the work to get out of those toxic pieces in which we've been raised. For my brain, when I see a trans person, I can, and my heart is there, but sometimes my brain plays tricks on me. So I know I still have work to do in regards to making sure I use those accurate pronouns. So do the work, dig in. All right. Why are we here today? Why do we care? Why are we doing this work? We work with humans. And when we do things the way they've always been done, so Saskatchewan Parks and Rec, for example, your own little communities, traditionally, systems are not made for everybody. We already know that. They are mostly made for middle-class white men. So when you fit into that space, you are a middle-class white male of any age, you will benefit from the system. More opportunities to the best equipment, more opportunities to be able to register for swimming lessons. Your parents already know how to get on the system and register. The system was designed for you. That doesn't mean you haven't made modifications and try to make it more accessible. But what it does mean is traditions or systems are not made for everybody. And what happens is when all of a sudden we're going to do something new, we're going to change that system because we're going to include the trans community. We're going to center a trans community. We're going to center a Muslim community or an Indigenous community. And you can center marginalized people. It is okay to do that. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. What happens is knowledge seems new. And when it's new, that's hard and it's more time consuming and you have to do it differently. And you got to change a lot of people's brains. The work that we do in rec and parks and sports with kids, it's ever changing and it's very busy. It includes a lot of people. If anybody rejects that change, the system just never changes and you're just going to continue to do it. My daughter is an elite level athlete. She plays 2 rep sports and all the other sports. It's an unbelievable amount of money for her sport. It is becoming more and more and more inequitable. And I'm just lucky that I'm able to pay that bill. It's a huge bill. It's big. I think I'm paying, it's in the $6,000, $7,000 range for every 6-month chunk of time, every season for 2 sports. And she's not in hockey. I can't imagine those hockey fees. So if you got hockey kids, you know it's even worse. That's inequitable. That keeps people out of sport. So what happens in this kind of world, which is what Canada is designed, is that somebody that's different shows up into your workplace or into one of your programs or into one of your volunteer systems. Somebody different shows up, different skin color, different religion, different sexual orientation, different presentation, different than white, cisgender, male. When you show up, what happens is the burden becomes on you. So let me walk you through this. The person shows up with a difference. And there's this exciting thing. Oh, amazing. Welcome, welcome. And if those of you who come from a marginalized community, this is going to ring very true for you. Those of you who do not have white colored skin, you have a religion that's not the majority where you live, you have a sexuality or a gender expression that is unique to your community, you're going to show up and you're going to feel welcomed. That's going to turn quickly into tokenism. Tokenism is when, where's my flag? Tokenism is when you hang flags on your door and you say you're going to invite communities in, but you don't have any policy or procedure to support it. There's actually nothing behind it. And I tell you, when my family sees this, it means something to us. That's tokenism. This person shows up into your organization and nothing's ready for them. The burden of change becomes on that person with the difference. You can see how the stress gets layered on. That person that's Muslim or Black or trans or gay or has a visual disability or a physical disability or an invisible disability, that person shows up and the burden of change becomes on them because it's one versus everybody else. And everybody subconsciously thinks, well, they'll figure it out. That person with the change, the pressure becomes on that person to make the change, to vocalize what they need, make those suggestions. And usually what happens is people just deny it. But we're only doing this for one person. We've never done it this way before. Why do we have to spend so much money on this adaptable desk for you when everybody else seems to manage? And what happens is that person with the difference leaves. And now they're gone. And now we're back here. And absolutely nothing has changed. And that's not what this is about. Canada is the first country in the world to have a non-binary census. Way to go, us. Way to go, us. What this means is we're now asking better questions, not perfect questions, probably not the right questions, but we're getting better. 50% of Canada is made up of women. A little bit less is made up as men because women live a little bit longer. 0.1% of our self-identified, so this is self-identified in our census, comes from the non-binary community. I just want you to think about that for a second. 50-50 essentially is how Canada is made up. We have 0.1% of the population that identifies in this non-binary category. This will include the trans community. And yet we spend so much time criticizing the advantage that a trans person may have in sport when there is advantages all over the place. You don't think that a white male has from a privileged community has an advantage in sport? You don't think Michael Phelps had an advantage in swimming? There are advantages all over the place in sport and recreation, and yet we focus on marginalized people to send our messages. We got to really think about that. 68.5% of our population is considered not of color. That used to say white, or Caucasian was the word. 73% in the last census has now dropped. We have a better word, not of color. Because we want to include, not everybody who has white skin identifies white. Our European friends don't necessarily identify as white. My partner is Middle Eastern. Her parents come from Cairo and Syria and Egypt and all over that sort of Middle East. They don't identify as white, but they kind of get put in white categories. So we're getting better at understanding. So 68% of Canada, so majority of Canada is actually female and not of color. Persons of color, so we call this the BIPOC community. 5% of the population is Indigenous, which is our fastest growing population today. And I know that the statistics are going to be different in the western side of Canada than us. This is just the Canadian statistic. When we look at persons of color, now remember, this BIPOC word is a government word. And let's remember, you can use the word BIPOC when you're talking about programs, but don't forget these are people. These are Black, Indigenous, and people of color. They are brown. They are Asian, they are Filipino. You can use the word to describe the community. So do the work to break that out. We don't want to lump in everybody into this BIPOC category. It is a great way to have a conversation that's inclusive, but we also want to make sure that these are human beings and that we want to make sure we figure out who they are. Don't forget that individualized approach. So when we look at Canada today, 26.7 come from the South Asian community, 17.8 from Chinese, 16 from Black, and then it goes on from there. I was actually talking about this particular slide with my college students last night, just after class, after I finished teaching class. When people don't feel that they fit in, like this person with a difference, two things happen to them. They code switch, which means they pretend to be less gay, less trans, less Black, less Chinese. They pretend to be less of who they are, and we never want that. Because when you mask who you are, you cannot reach your full potential. You are not fully engaged in your work or with any of your relationships. The other thing we're forced to do is to help or advocate. And that can be really tiring work. And it's usually us, the people with a difference, that have to do the fighting all the time. I cannot represent all of the lesbians of the world. I wish that would be a cool title. I wish I could, but I can only come from my own experience. But I often get asked, well, Sarah, what do you think about the gay community? Well, I don't know, but I can tell you what I think. So making sure when we have systems that are stuck the way they've always been, people get forced. And that's not what belonging is. We want people to find their sense of belonging. We want people to move towards belonging. And to do that, that's what inclusion actually is creating spaces for everyone. When you center one person, one trans person, one Black person, one Muslim person, when you center, it benefits every single body. It benefits everybody. Triathlon Canada, they're having a non-binary competition category for as many competitions as they can. They're getting one athlete. One athlete. That one athlete gets the same prize money, gets the same competition structure, the same officials, same, because they deserve it. And they will continue to do that until they get more athletes, because that's the right thing to do. That's where we go towards belonging. Belonging is what this whole conversation is about today. When you find your belonging in a space, you act honest, authentically, you're more productive, you have better relationships, you bring your best work forward, you're less tired, you're more committed. You won't walk away thinking, I can't believe I just get paid for this job. I remember working in recreation being like, I can't believe I get paid for this awesome thing. To feel belonging, there's a couple of things. It's not the same for everybody, but this is pretty consistent. You feel welcome in a space. Your basic needs are met. So back to the person with a difference, your basic needs are met. You have what it takes to feel safe. When I walk into a facility, I should be able to have access to go pee in a safe way as much as my trans friends can. We should be able to walk in and have a bathroom that's accessible to us without having to ask any questions or make a big deal. Those are those basic needs. It's not a benefit. We should all be able to go to the washroom in a safe way. That's something we need to think about. You got to feel welcome, and then you got to feel safe. I was in a facility in Ontario not too long ago where my bathroom was on the main level because I use the women's washroom. That's how they were defined. I'm quite happy to use an accessible washroom. I don't need to have a gender identity on the bathroom door, but I got it. That's privilege. My trans colleague that was with me had to go down into the basement, all the way down to this kind of dark and dingy place. That's not equitable. That's not safe. Got to think about that. Once you feel safe, once you feel welcome, you start to feel engaged. When you feel engaged, you start to feel committed. When you feel committed, you start to belong. It's a process for everybody, and we need to make sure individual needs are met. Yes, absolutely, at the individual level. I want to show you this video about Brene Brown. If you haven't dug into her work, tons of Netflix specials on her. She's hilarious. She's super smart. Her books are fascinating, not easy reads, but really fascinating. I'm just finishing a book right now, which it talks about there's over 80 emotions that humans go through, and yet we only really talk about 8 to 10 of them. So I'm learning a language about emotions, how to express myself. But let's hear what she says about belonging.
Belonging. We're wired for love. We're hardwired for belonging. It's in our DNA. But let me tell you what belonging is. The opposite of belonging from the research is fitting in. That's the opposite of belong. Fitting in is assessing and acclimating. Here's what I should say, be. Here's what I shouldn't say. Here's what I should avoid talking about. Here's what I should dress like, look like. That's fitting in. Belonging is belonging to yourself first. Speaking your truth, telling your story, and never betraying yourself for other people. True belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are. And that's vulnerable.
That's the vulnerable piece, is being our authentic selves. And we talk about the word fitting in. We never want that. We don't want that. We want people to find their belonging. So in the work you do, how do you do that? How do you do that? I want to ground us on two really important words. Inclusion is one and diversity is one. I think it's important we understand what these words are. Diversity is often where this conversation gets stuck. Diversity is the difference between who we are as people and who's in the room. Okay. So if we take a look at everybody in this Zoom call today, are we every single person represented in Canada or represented in Saskatchewan? And the question is that it's absolutely not. but we do represent a fair bit of diversity. What does that look like? So it really is in your organization. What I want to encourage you to do is, who is in the room? Who do you have represented? Take a look at that. Who is there? Now, where this conversation gets stuck is it becomes about skin color and religious representation. So whether you visibly represent a religion, so maybe maybe a Jewish human or maybe a Muslim person that has those visual representations. That is where it typically starts. Black, brown, Chinese, white. That is a big part of what diversity is. And you want to make sure you look at diversity within your hiring practices. It is okay. And believe me, I've talked to lawyers about this. It is okay to hire specific humans. You have a big Indigenous community? Hire some Indigenous people. You can specifically state that in your descriptors. It is okay to do that. It is equitable to do that. Diversity is more than just that person's skin color, although that is an important part of the person. Demographic diversity is typically where we stop and where sort of this divide occurs. It is our inherent characteristics like race, gender, ethnicity, identity, and faith. These are things that typically don't change. Now, we already are learning that gender does change and actually faith can change. A really, really, really close friend of mine was born and raised Christian and recently converted to Judaism so she could marry her husband. And so now she considers herself Jewish. That's quite unique. Pretty cool process to go through. But those things typically don't change. But again, there is some flexibility within all the things, right? So demographic diversity is one piece of diversity. The other pieces are life experiences, where you were born and raised, places you've lived, your interactions with other people, your hobbies, where you've grown up, where you've traveled, places you visited, and the language in which you speak, right? Those can also be things that are diverse pieces of one another. And the last piece of diversity is your cognitive diversity, how you think through problems, how your brain kind of works, how you approach problems, the differences. And, in society, we kind of have that type A personality and we kind of identify people in these personalities. We actually all have preferences. We have preferences and we need a diverse group of those kinds of thinkers. We need different thinkers. So in your organizations, do you have demographic diversity represented? Do you have life experience diversity represented? In a lot of organizations, we ask for degrees and experience. That can take out a whole community of people. I work in post-secondary education. We want more Indigenous professors, but PhD is on the hiring form. You got to have a PhD. I teach at a university about 40 minutes east of me. And I'm doing a strategic planning session and they're telling me, well, Sarah, we can't take off the PhD if we're going to hire Indigenous people. Statistically speaking, Indigenous people have lower rates of PhDs than non-Indigenous people. So when we're looking at hiring professors from Indigenous communities, my recommendation is you take that PhD off. Does that make a good teacher or educator? Because it's a barrier. And they're telling me, well, we can't have people who don't have PhDs here. And I'm putting my hand up. Well, I was at the front of the room. I'm like, well, I teach here. I've taught here for 5 years and I don't have a PhD. So why am I here? And they can't come. So understanding it, asking questions and digging deep is really important. And that room was silenced because it's unnecessary. They consider me a good educator. They keep hiring me to teach courses there and I don't have a PhD. The other thing is cognitive diversity. Do you have representation? You can think about age, experience, all those kinds of things. Detailed workers, more random workers. I'm really good with people and delivering courses. I'm not so good at crossing all my T's and dotting all my I's. Not so good at that. I'm also dyslexic, so I can't spell. Okay, so diversity are those pieces. And what happens with diversity is the intersections of our stories. We all have power and privilege and safe access and more access than others, depending on where we are. Understanding where you fit in will help you in this work. It has to start with you. Once you start to dig in, you will start to understand. So start with you. It will make the world just explode in front of you in the most beautiful of ways, and some hard things too. If you go around that wheel, you're going to zigzag in and out of there. Now, sadly enough, when we talk about intersectionality, Society has determined or treats people certain ways. So the darker your skin color, the further you are away from the center of power and privilege. So I have more opportunities because of my white skin than maybe my black friends. I might get better job opportunities or higher pay based on the color of my skin. And where this came from was a civil rights lawyer, a black woman in the United States, who was recognizing that people with my skin color had less jail sentences than people with black or brown skin color. And what's that about? Right? We're doing the same bad thing. We're breaking the law in the same way, yet I get a lighter sentences just because of my skin tone. And that's why we're digging in. Your education level, your ability, your sexuality. So I might be closest to power based on my skin color. But look at lesbian, I'm at the very end of that wheel. I'm far back from power and privilege in society. We are very marginalized. In fact, the LGBTQ community is the second most marginalized community in Toronto. They receive the most hate crimes, second right now to anti-Semitic behavior due to the war that's going on. My neurodiversity, I told you I have a learning disability. Mental health, if you suffer from anxiety, depression, and the diverse spectrum of mental health challenges, that pushes you out, less opportunities for you. Your physical size, and I know that's a thing in our work, physical size. Somebody's decided along the way that if you're larger, you're less capable. I mean, what? Your housing situation, your wealth, how much money is in your bank account, if you drive a Tesla or a really bad old beat up Subaru that I do. The language you speak. Language is a tough one in Canada today, and I live in a very diverse community. And I have family members that will often say, wow, your English is amazing. When we say things like that, we're centering white English speakers as privileged, as the norm, as what we strive for, right? People with accents are often marginalized. Our gender and our gender expression, and it can go even into citizenship. So if you take a look around that wheel, we are closer or further away from that center of power. And that's what inclusion, it kind of leads us to inclusion. This last word I want to talk to you about, this went by so quick. This last word I want to talk to you about. Inclusion can be a really hard word for people because historically, and this is where the work has to be done, historically, inclusion means we take a person from one community and we drop it in a mainstream community and we're like, good luck, have fun, that's inclusion. So my friend in Mohawk territory, it's 6 nations, got taken off reserve. He's an Indigenous man. And when he was a young boy, took him off reserve and put him in a mainstream school with no Indigenous kids. And that's what the school system considered inclusion. And nobody helped the white students or the non-Indigenous students, and nobody helped my friend. And so inclusion can be a very difficult word because we've done it wrong. What actually inclusion is the things we do in purpose, with plans, with people, by people, to create spaces for all these different types of humans. If you think of diversity as trees, inclusion is how and where we plant the trees. What do we do with the trees? How do we nurture those trees? What trees do we need? What trees are missing? Why aren't certain trees here? Equity is the tools we use: watering the trees, planting the trees, moving them, feeding them, nurturing them, help them reach their full potential. The structures and the programs, that's what equity is. So diversity is those 3 elements. Let me show you one more time. Demographic, life experience, and cognitive. Inclusion are the things we do in purpose, the thing we do with goals and planning, the things we do before and during and with to make sure our programs are always okay. Inclusion is really taking a look at those things. Equity are the tools that we use. And when we do those 3 things together, we have that idea and that sense of belonging. In society today, when we break up these words a little bit further, I was raised in a system that was fair, which we call the reality, which is that picture on the far left. What society means, and you're going to see this in Saskatchewan, is that people who have access to everything get everything. It's easy. They can register all their kids in swimming lessons, no problem. And you all know how difficult swimming lessons are to register. I've been on both sides of that I remember working front desk sometimes when the receptionist had meetings. I would cover the front desk. Holy man, that's a hard job. And I'd be answering questions, and the person on the phone would be like, "Hi, I have 6 kids. Could you just tell me your swimming lesson schedule?" And I'm like, "We have like 400 lessons." I was just like, "Oh, okay. Do you have like 4 days for this conversation?" But the reality is that everybody gets more. So people who are registering will continue to register. People who are left out will continue to be left out. Equality is the assumption of this whole idea of fair, which I think should be the new F word of the work we do. Equality means that everybody benefits from the same support. So we have one registration system and everybody just has to register. Or we have one way to pay, which is very, very unfair. It's very exclusionary. What happens is if you see in the equality picture, if you see the person in the yellow pants doesn't need that box, but they get one. I mean, they just had all the boxes in the previous picture. The person in the middle gets a box. That works for them to see that baseball game. And the person on the end still has one box, can't see the game. This is the system that I was raised in, and this is the system that I actually followed in my recreation work. And we left a lot of people behind that way. Equity is better, and that's that word I was talking about in that last slide. Equity is where people get what they need. So if somebody shows up, let me show you that slide again. Somebody with a difference shows up into your organization, you're going to do everything that it takes to get that person the things that they need. That means you might have a bigger budget for that person. You might need a different kind of chair for that person. You might need to change your access. And you do that. I work in sport a lot. When we send athletes to other facilities, I am for sure phoning ahead and saying, I got a trans athlete, make sure that there's a safe space for that person to change. And it's not going to be a broom closet. It's going to be an equitable place. It's going to be a safe place. And then there's going to be a place where they can join us for team meetings. We're not isolating this child, and I'm going to use my voice to do that, right? I'm phoning ahead because that athlete needs more. They need me to make that phone call. Am I making that phone call for all my other athletes? No, because they don't need me to make that phone call. But for that one athlete, when I show up at a facility with a trans athlete, they better have a safe space to change, to get clean, to use the washroom, and to join us for team meetings and celebrations, or what happens, the frustration part of sport. But we're going to do it together. Equality is, equity is making sure everybody gets what they need. And that's a system we're typically not used to. Justice is where you want to go. You want to break down those barriers so that people can access your facilities as easy as possible. When I worked for the city of Victoria, we had a funding program. It was called the LIFE program for people that were on social assistance. And what we noticed that this is a low literacy community. And so people would come in to fill out these very complicated forms with tax receipts and all these things. And this community really struggled. And we're trying to support their finances so they could bring their kids and use our facilities for free. So our team would take as long as it takes to sit with the family and fill out the forms with them. So I would be pulled out of meetings. I would be pulled out of programs. I would be pulled out to sit with the family and make sure their forms were filled out so that they could get the financial support they needed so their children had a safe place to access. That's justice. Yeah, I was in the mayor's office once. I got pulled out to help a family. The mayor's like, absolutely, you got to go help this family. An illiterate family with a ton of children, new to the city of Victoria. We're gonna make sure that they get in there safely. That's what justice is breaking down all those barriers. So my very last slide with 2 minutes left. Where do you start your work in recreation? Where do you start? What's not on here? Start with you. Start with you. Figure out your bias. You all have them. We all have racist thoughts. I am not a racist, but I do have racist thoughts. I was not raised in a system that was like it is today. And our world it's going to be hard as the United States goes through what they're going through. It will affect us here in Canada. We got to be ready. Understand what barriers exist with gender identity. Change your forms. I'm a parent with my kid has 2 moms. I would love to be able to fill out a form where both my names can go on it and I don't have to cross out the word father. Start with simple changes that are easy for you to manage. Add a pronoun in on your business card if you're not already doing that. Have inclusive gender forms. Target systems and structures that maintain that status quo. Create a gender inclusive policy. Policy supports, right? That avoids tokenism. We have things that protect children, anti-bullying policies, and then there's a policy that supports. So when a child gets bullied, we know what to do. And at High Five, we support everybody involved, right? It's a social problem. Well, do we treat it differently if it's a transgendered youth? Well, we should. Why do we treat it differently? Because of that slide that I just showed you, because that's what's needed. That's what is deserving. That's what's important. And offer up voices. If you want to have a trans policy, reach out to the trans community. Don't do it without their input, and pay them what they're worth. Don't throw them $100 honorarium. Pay them what you're getting paid. Make it equitable. Make it work. The last thing I want to tell you, and then I can open up for questions, or you can get the heck out of here. The last thing I want to tell you, it is okay to center marginalized communities. When you have somebody in the center, like white males, and everybody else is left out, we all feel terrible. We all feel terrible. So when you center a community, like a trans community, when you center, you are supporting everybody, and the system gets better for everyone. You don't have to kick out the non-trans people. You just add, and it makes a safer space for everyone to find their sense of belonging. Okay, 3:31. I better, well, for me anyways, I better stop. Thanks everybody. I can stick around for questions, but feel free to take off. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. I hope you like that. Yeah. Kelsey.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate you sharing your knowledge, your experience, your passion, your humor with us all today. I have attended a few of your sessions in the past, and they always leave me feeling really inspired on the topic of inclusion. So thank you.
Thank you.
So yes, thank you to all of our participants today, Sarah and Inclusion Incorporated, for being with us and contributing to our journey towards more inclusive parks and recreation places, programs, and services. Great to have you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And Kelsey has my email, everybody. So does Carrie. Feel free to reach out if you want resources or questions. We don't charge for all that stuff. We're more than happy to support. And if you have a specific question, you feel free to ask it, or you can email me later. It's up to you. Yeah, I'll put the email in the chat, actually.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Yep. Thank you.